Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at Poet Technologies. This was a stock analysis request from one of the followers, and I wanted to let you know that anyone can make these requests and I'll most likely cover them, especially if there is an actionable trade setup to follow. And in the case of this chart, there is a very serious choppy mess going on. We only have 3-wave patterns in basically every direction within this area. And fortunately, we did break at least and form a new low here where a potential for an uptrend has emerged, and not only that, we did even create this, to be honest, quite ugly initial wave one to the upside that could be tracked as a leading diagonal in a 5-wave move, which is interesting. It allows for a potential trade setup within this area. And we had already completed the wave 2 correction that is already in place in the previous video. We did get, however, to the area of support, which allows us to consider this pattern as potentially complete. We didn't need absolutely any additional lows, although there was certainly a significant risk, especially as we only had at the moment 3 waves to the upside. And we were watching for resistance levels for a signal that this structure would manage a more significant breakout, but we only got one more high. Now, this isn't too bad because within this additional high, we actually completed a 5-wave move to the upside. And even though we did even break the internal area of support that we would have here normally for a wave 4 correction, it did succeed in forming here the 5th wave anyway. Now, there really aren't other interpretations that could be tracked within this area that would allow a reliable structure. Not even an ABC movement could be reliably tracked within this area. So if we are to push higher, I will continue with considering this as a wave 1 up in a leading diagonal, another leading diagonal, and here we would have a wave 2 correction. And that seems to work fine for the most part, but if we are to fail pushing continuously higher, if we form another low, if we break again below the last swing low at the $3.9 level, it would be a signal that this would have been just something like a WXY pattern, in which case we should be prepared for a larger correction, a reset of the wave 2. And for that, again, the last swing low, the $3.9 level, remains the key level that must not be broken, and that is also due to the fact that within this idea of a 1-2 setup, we did hold the area of support, but we did also push to the absolute last level. It was actually a quite nice reaction, but we did also push it to the limits, and a reset would not really work out in my opinion, and we should be prepared for even further continuation to the downside if we don't succeed in forming the larger structure to the upside within this area. And we will need to be tracking even an internal area of resistance here, as we can notice that within this structure we have only pushed into the last level of resistance. We did not get a break as of yet, and a potential 1-2 setup that could take us in a follow-up wave 3 to the downside is still in place, especially considering how strong this movement to the downside is. I could maybe even work out into tracking it as a 5-wave move, although I don't necessarily prefer that. But we shouldn't get into that small structure and small mess anyway. And now, to track continuation higher, within this area we actually have some interesting patterns, some interesting structures, because internally we have formed here a 5-wave move to the upside in a wave 1, we had a wave 2 correction, we formed an impulse within the wave 3, and this could have been the wave 4 bottom, and it could still be actually, where now we would be tracking a 5th wave within an ending diagonal, because then we would need to track this as a 1-2 setup, and this would be clearly only in a 3-wave pattern. We would have here a wave 2 correction in another 3-wave pattern, and then we would track another ABC within a larger wave 3. Now, whether that is the case, or if we actually are forming a running flat where we had an overshoot within a wave B and then a wave C to the downside within this area, I would instead be tracking a 1-2 setup here, where I would still be looking for the exact area of support to continue higher. Now, this is once again assuming that we have actually formed a top here, which we might have considering the follow-up downside ever since we actually formed this peak. And in this case, I would be watching for support for continuation higher in both interpretations. In whether the wave 4 bottomed here or here, the same area of support will be tracked. In the case where the wave 4 bottom in the latter showcase, I would be tracking instead a 1-2 setup where a wave 3 would be expected to form afterwards. It would be expected also to be much stronger, because we would be tracking an impulse within this overall wave 5, whereas if it bottomed here, we would be tracking an ABC movement, in which case we wouldn't necessarily expect the same strength of the follow-up wave C, but we would still expect continued movements higher, and even after we form an additional top within this area, I would still expect another correction and another fifth wave in actually both interpretations. Now, once again, this is assuming that we are going to manage to break the area of resistance. This is not a guarantee, because you see, we could still be tracking here a potential 1-2 setup in the larger yellow interpretation, in which case the correction could already have a top within the wave 2, and we could be looking at a quite significant reversal to the downside. And at this point, I wouldn't necessarily recommend looking for positions. It could become very interesting once we have this 5-wave move to the upside complete, once we do break the area of resistance, because another correction in a wave 2 would be expected afterwards, with us having after that point, or at that point, a full series of 1-2 setups in 3-1-2 setups basically, that would expect a third wave to emerge afterwards. That would actually be expected to be very, very significant and very, very strong. Now, with that said, there isn't much else to add at this point. In terms of resistance, I cannot give you anything internally. We have the yellow resistance area to track continuation lower, and the break above the $7.8 level is still very, very important. I would be watching that level, and then the break below the 78.6% retracement at the $6.5 is also extremely important not to fail holding, because a break below that would signal that this wave 2 has already formed the top, that we are very, very likely heading into the larger retracement, as we don't have yet an initial 5-wave move to the upside complete. And for now, these are the levels, this is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what else you want me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days, weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.